You're good, President.
Okay. We are ready to start. Okay, welcome. We appreciate you, those of you that have joined us and have driven and are here. The date is Wednesday, June 22nd at 3 p.m. We have Board Member Steve Black, Board Member Lori Vaughn, Superintendent Nelson, Business Administrator Tyrell Pemberton. We have other staff, and we also have Nelson Yellman, Board Member, and the Cody Board Member via, however, electronically, I guess what the word is. So virtually, that's what I need to think. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
A motion by Steve. Do I have a second?
Lucille Cody, second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Nelson, Lucille, I need to hear from you both.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with our San Juan Quest update, Superintendent.
Awesome. I just wanted to update the board on some work that's happening that is, I think, exciting, and it's just in the early stages. But there has been a tremendous amount of work going to it thus far. But it's certainly ongoing work that will go on and continue with a lot of different stakeholders input into it. But I want to make sure the board is aware, and as we kind of go along, I think periodically we should bring updates back to the board and allow input from the board. And at some point, maybe the board even wants to get involved at a deeper level. That would all be wonderful. But the state of Utah has let out with what they call a portrait of a graduate for the state. And they have encouraged districts then, they've provided a lot of resources to try to empower districts to then become involved as well in developing our own portrait of a graduate vision work. Now, a portrait of a graduate kind of represents your district vision, and it needs to be, it's a bridge between your mission, your vision, and all the things you do in the school district and what you believe the skills and the characteristics, that the competencies that a student should obtain while they're working through your LEA, all the, through the grade levels, in order to be prepared to graduate and go out into the world. And so you look at those competencies and those characteristics, and when you start to look at them and put them down and you get into the strategic work, your vision, and your motto and your vision statement and all those things, it plays a very integral role in how you look at that and how you build your schedules and your curriculums and all of those things that really define what you're doing in the schools. So you have a copy there of a draft. We have had our district leadership team doing some very, they've kind of picked it up and dedicated some time. They've been able to attend some state supported trainings. But even before that, we were able to bring some of this to parent surveys. We've been able to tap into that. Staff work, we've been able to tap into input through the staff. So what you see here attached is just a draft document. It doesn't, it's going to tie in very nicely with what we have our San Juan Quest. And you can kind of see that right there as it talks about Unite, Empower, and our vision statement and our motto. And then if you go down to that second page there, you see the competencies and the characteristics that we are starting to build it around. We'll develop some kind of a visual that will also come together, but we'll work very carefully with all of our stakeholders to try to bring this work together and then make it something that is meaningful at the school level. It's not just another document that's you can pull up and look at if you want. Now, this is supposed to drive decisions. It's supposed to help guide what happens at the school level in so many different directions. So I want the board to be aware that this work is happening. It's in its, it's in its beginning phases and stages. The state is really supporting us. They're supporting districts across the state. They're encouraging us to do this work. And this work is happening in San Juan School District. So I want you to be aware of that. And be as involved as you would like to be.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, our discussion items, the first one is our responsible use of technology agreement. David, are you with us?
I am with you.
Okay, we
Uh,
can't hear you very well.
I'm super quiet. I'll try to talk louder.
That's better, thank you.
So basically we've been made aware by UEN that the acceptable use policy that we've been using didn't meet all of the requirements of the Children's Internet Protection Act. And they gave us this document to guide us in creating a set of acceptable use policies that would meet the needs of that. Basically, there's these 7 points that we're trying to make sure that we hit. And because these are kind of sensitive topics, the access by minors to inappropriate matter, that kind of stuff, we chose to divide our acceptable use policy into an elementary school one, and then a high school and middle school acceptable use policy, so that we could use language that really was more appropriate to each age. So we're trying to hit these 7 points that UEN has said we need to make sure that those are addressed in our acceptable use policy. And I'm going to assume that you have not had time to read that, to go through these documents. Is that correct?
They've had them since last
These-
weekend, so they very easily
Yes,
could have read
they
through them.
read them.
Okay, so you have gone through them. Perfect. So I guess that's this section right here that I'm highlighting. I don't know if you can see my screen. That's the section that we are trying very hard to make sure that we're covering this. And then the other thing that we're doing it right now, we're having this public meeting where the school board can discuss them, give us feedback, and then choose to either adopt or adopt in a future meeting. So basically what we need to do is, do you have any concerns about these as you've read through them? Is there anything that that you felt we missed that we should be addressing?
I think things are really, I think you've covered things. I did have some questions, if I can get to the right document. On the one that the student or that people sign, is it students and parents? What age of students are signing these? Are they intended for K through 12? I may have missed that if it's on there.
We have 2 separate ones. right
Okay, the
now.
elementary and does the elementary go clear down? Are we including this? Preschoolers, kindergartners is what I'm wondering. Do they get
Yes.
these devices, and is then their parents? I was just
Yes.
wondering as I was reading through all of it, for instance, I won't put a sticker. It says, I won't put stickers on it, or I won't take the barcode off of it. And over the course of the year, one kid puts a sticker on it and somebody else thinks that's cool. And people forget these things. It's such a long list, and I think it's very comprehensive and important to have the long list, but what can we do to reiterate and help people know that they are responsible for this? And it's just a long list of things. And I don't think anything ought to be removed. It's just how do we keep up on it?
That's actually part of the Children Internet Protection Act as well, is that we have a digital citizenship session for every student in the district. And so that actually, I think that's addressed in the document that they will participate in that. And I'm trying to find it in here where it says, yeah, education for minors about this. So we have to cover that every year.
A lot of that is taught through procedures by classroom teachers as well. And, you know, as a
And
teacher.
just reiterated throughout the year,
Yes,
possibly?
yeah,
That's what I'm
generally they'll
thinking.
do it 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay.
As at the beginning of the year, and then generally at Christmas, then as needed,
Okay.
just as a procedure, same as, you know, walking down the hall and asking to get a drink and some of those
Continue
things.
to remind. Okay.
It's also part of school community council with digital citizenship, so it is talked about during school community council, meetings on the agenda specifically. In the elementary state. A lot.
Okay.
Something else for,
No.
Sil, did you have anything?
Thorough.
So I guess our proposal would be that the elementary school would be with the elementary school. So K6 in most communities and K5 for Bluff and Blanding. And then the high school would be 7 through 12 everywhere but ARL, and that's going to be 6 through 12 there in Blanding. That would be our proposed use of these documents.
So
And
what,
any additional questions?
student breaks, well, I mean, what happens if they destroy it? I mean, either I did not read that, but I understand that if we break the rules, there's disciplinary action, but what if who pays for those damages? District?
We talked about that. If they are intentional, yes, we do charge a fine is not a fee. Vandalism is not a fee, so it's not waivable, it's a fine. And what we do in that case is we do issue a bill if we find that it was intentional damage. And we prorate the device. These devices are all purchased with a lifespan of how long until we replace them. And Aaron could speak to that better than me, but they all have a lifespan. And we are also trying to work towards the idea that in the case of our high school kids, they will end their career with a chance to purchase their device. The device will have expired its lifespan and they'll get the first shot of buying it. In normal situations, we have we have our cells over here, our surplus cells. And these all sell for, I think, $25. But we think that if our students had first opportunity to purchase them and they knew that, it would be motivation for them to try to protect the device as well. But we prorate the life of the machine. We do charge the parents. It's not a waivable fee.
So where do we put that language? Is it just in policy? I mean, as a parent, I would not go look at the policy. I would assume it might be in the agreement. They're gonna agree to that fact.
And we have the Chromebook Care Agreement, David's highlighting it there, that actually outlines those costs and goes over vandalism versus accidental.
Is that in the high school one that you're on, David?
Yeah, that's on the high
Oh.
school sheet, and it should be on the elementary signature sheet as well, where the parents agree that they will they'll look through that
I
and
understand that language, correct?
So, yeah, so this is the, if you can see this or not. This effective use of technology and you'll see, and this is just what we've done before, but the price is depending on a year. And that's a signature that's
It's presented on the day of school.
that is presented at the school.
Okay.
During registration,
So they will see those fees.
yes.
Do the parents actually go into the schools at registration? Isn't everything done online now?
They can see it online now.
Yeah, they could see it online.
That's
They
what
could sign
So
it, sign
nobody's
it
going through
electronic.
it.
Yes, yeah. that's-
Okay. So another question then is who and how is it determined whether it was neglect or vandalism?
So what we have done in that case is there is a quick check of a machine. And if there is damage to that machine, it goes to our techs. at each of the buildings, and they assess whether that was damage or accidental damage, and make a recommendation to the administration. So they're the ones that do that. All of our techs are able to repair those machines, so they see a number of them throughout the year. But that's generally what we do. Is if there's a question, they can give input to a principal, and ultimately the principal will visit with parents and talk.
Is there a way that we could do, I guess that would be, it would include a fee waiver. I was just thinking if everybody could put a deposit, and if their device comes back in good condition, that it would be a fee. And so that's not an incentive necessarily. Usually when people have, something to lose, I saw it with my own kids. They buy something themselves and they took very good care of it. Sometimes if I bought it, sometimes they took good care of it, sometimes they didn't. But, okay, that answers that question. Thanks.
All right, anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
So we have really two different documents written in different language for two different audiences. It's the same acceptable use policy, really just different language. Do we have one for the rest of the users of devices and so forth, employees and so forth?
We do have one for employees. That's not included on this, but we do have one with employees.
So
Yeah,
our discussion.
we haven't finished
This
that
is
one.
Just these,
Just
the
student.
student ones, and we're trying to get it ready so that we have it for registration. But yes, and we can get you a copy of it. Dave, you may wanted to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we haven't finished that one, and the Children's Internet Protection Act doesn't require that that we bring that to board for approval. And we do have board policy that says we'll have one of those. So my intent was to bring that at a future meeting when I've had time to address it.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, David.
All right, number 2, the Utah Food Bank, and I'm not sure who's going to be, Jeanette, is it you? They're going to assume me. Go ahead, thank you.
For those of you in the room that I haven't met today, my name is Jeanette Mott, President and CEO of the Utah Food Bank. And as you can see, we travel in a pack. We come in numbers. Scott Woodhead is our COO. Jennifer Pratt is our CFO. With us today is Joe Hurst, who is our contractor. And behind him on the second line there, we have our friends from the Utah Navajo Land Trust, Tony Daniels and Maury Bergman, who are here to answer questions that you may have. Just a brief history about Utah Food Bank. We have been doing what we're doing since 1904. We are the affiliate of Feeding America, meaning here in the state of Utah, we are the food bank that supplies food through Emergency Food Network to all 29 counties. We have over 300 pantries that we serve. This past fiscal year, we did about 69 million pounds of food throughout Utah, and that's about 53 million meals. Everything that's delivered through Utah Food Bank is done free of charge. There's no charge to the 300 pantries. There's no membership or delivery charge. There is no charge for poundage of the food they receive, and there's no charge to the recipient who receives food from these programs. So we fundraise at a level that we are able to provide free food all the way through the process. And there's only about 3 or 4 food banks left in the country that do that. Most food banks will charge a maintenance fee and collect poundage cents on the dollar for money back to the major food bank, and we decided not to do that. So I started this process a couple of years ago. The Utah Food Bank was approached by the state treasurer's office and the folks from the Utah Navajo Land Trust to say, can you bring pantries to the reservation? And we've been serving this area for 30 years. We've been coming 1 truckload at a time. And we didn't have anything bigger than the Landry Pantry or some volunteer distributions that were happening on the reservation. So we started serious conversation, and the pandemic started, and we were sidelined by that. About a year later, we started those talks again. And as that year had passed, I had given thought to the best way for us to approach the request. What I had come up with would be a better business model, if you will, Meaning if we had a warehouse or distribution center here in Blanding, we could serve pantries all around this portion of the state much better, much more economically, and really more cost effective for us as an organization. So the decision was made that Blanding would be the home for the warehouse. As you know, we've purchased 7.5 acres on the corner of 200 North coming into town. Trihurst Construction is working with us and we're building a warehouse there that will employ probably 10 or 11 people in that location. In addition to the warehouse, there'll be a new pantry that will be part of that building. We've also purchased property in Montezuma Creek, and we're working in the process now of, we were out there all day yesterday, measuring, walking, looking, and determining the best position, and that will be right next door to the Family Dollar. And then we would love to do an identical pantry in Monument Valley that would be the same premise. When I presented to all of you in November, we talked through this process and I was concerned about the amount of property you have, and that's understandable. And the conversation of that day was go out and see what you can find, see what you can do, see where you can go that wouldn't impact the school board's property. And we understand and truly do understand that how valuable that land, that resource is. So we did some due diligence over the course of the last year. Inside the binder that I gave you, if you open that up, you'll see on one side the rendering of what the pantry will look like. We traveled to Monument Valley to the elementary school and took pictures of that building and took that back to our architect and said, we want these buildings to blend in to the area, to the construction that's already there, and to have the look and feel of what's already been provided for the community. So that's where the rendering came up. H. Walker in Salt Lake has created those two pantries, and again, they'll be identical in both locations. The next thing for us to do was to find a location in Monument Valley. We did a lot of work trying to find what we deemed to be property that could be purchased. And the reason it's important for us to purchase property is the money that we were given from the state legislature passes through. So if we purchase property from you, that money comes directly to you to be used by the school board however you see fit. If I end up leasing property, that money will go back to the government. I would much rather see, and that was why we were so excited with Montezuma Creek and here in Blanding, we were able to purchase those properties outright, have those monies benefit the communities, and that money would benefit you guys as well. As we looked at all the area, we went up the canyon to the little greenhouse that used to be the daycare center. I think that's owned still under a lease with San Juan Foundation. That location is too small for us. We looked at the health clinic that's there. That location is too small for us. We worked with the LDS church and we were right up to the point where they were doing a search on the property for clear deed and they were establishing a price to sell that. Someone from the area here said, no, with the university putting a campus across the street, we're going to have to enlarge that chapel. We need to keep the property. So right up to the very end, we thought we had that land and that was withdrawn back from us. We've met and worked with Utah State University to see if there was a way that we could combine projects, to see if we could put both of our ideas in one location of property. And we could. There would just be no parking for anyone to come to use either of the buildings because it took up the entire acre, the amount of property that they had purchased. We also tried to do some work in the Gouldings area. And there were some very interesting twists and turns to that we determined we wanted to step away from. So we have done a lot of due diligence. Probably the most frustrating that we have come back to us is our thought was working with the Navajo Nation. We figured that serving the population we were, there would be an element of support. And we had learned that in January, the vice president was here doing a service project. And County Commissioner Bruce Adams had talked to him and he was in support of it and wanted to help us, said start the process, have them reach out to us. And we did that the following day. And since then, it's been 6 months of very interesting communication and a very difficult communication channel, if you will. I've attached for you in there, and you don't need to read it verbatim, but there are email after email after email summaries highlighted dates on there, showing you conversations we've tried to have with the Navajo Nation. The last one coming back saying, here's a 10-acre spot of land, do a survey on the piece you want. They gave us a whole list of things we needed to do to complete it, telling us on their form it would be about a 5-year window to go through their process to get approval. But here's the challenge we have. The money that we have been given by the state of Utah has to be in progress and used on June 30th of next year. So we only have 12 months left to have this building or function to a process where we are buying, purchasing, paying out for not only the building, but for infrastructure and things to put these pantries together. So conversations we have had back and forth. Ron and I have talked, and he's had additional conversation with the Navajo Nation. We very directly said, how can we circumvent the long period of time that it takes, knowing that if we try to do every single step within the time frame, we'll lose the money. There didn't seem to be an urgency or a concern or a way to expedite that. So we're kind of at a point now where, having tried everything that I think we can to purchase in the area, with exception of coming back to you, I don't see land available to purchase. Last night we met with, and Tony has agreed that, you know, perhaps there's something he can help us do to see if we can take one more step with the nation. But I am out of options. I am at this point out of opportunities where to look. And I guess I'd like just quickly to hear from each of you, if you think this project even has, is it valid? Are we doing the right thing? I look at your motto that's just continuing our commitment to children. That's what we're trying to do. Could each of you just quickly share with me whether you think this is something we should pursue?
This is Lucille Cody. It is something that is a good thing for our community, because in Montezuma Creek, I was volunteering, helping with the food bank down there. And my family used to volunteer and help Roxanne down there. And we served a lot of families down there. And it is a good thing. And a lot of them are our students too. So it is a good thing. And I support you.
Thank you.
Nelson, do you want to speak to that, or speak next, I guess?
Good afternoon. Well, first of all, I feel bad for you having to go round and round with Navajo Nation government. Probably a couple of questions I have. First one would be, I know there's some food that's being, a little bit of food being stored and distributed from the elementary school at Sabine-Ziskay Elementary. And I don't know if it's the same at Monument Valley High School as well. And if it is, it just goes to show that there's that need for students of the community of Monument Valley for the food distribution, as well as the community itself. And I don't know what kind of a agreement is in place. Is it with the school locally, or is it with the district?
The food that's coming to the schools for the programs, they're coming from Utah Food Bank to the schools. There's a pantry also in Montezuma Creek. So that's food that comes to the school that can be handed out to the children. One of the reasons we wanted to be close to the schools is that we will hope to be able to serve the families better than just the small quantities of food that they're getting from these small school pantries. And we're also doing a lot of work with diet specific items, like a diabetes box, for example. If a doctor diagnoses someone and they find they have to have special diets, we're building specific boxes of food. We wanted to be able to do that in conjunction with the health clinics in the area. And we're also working to develop some really good partnerships with vendors who will allow us to have more Native American specific diet items in the pantry versus just white flour and canned food. So again, all of it free. The food that you see in the schools now could be expanded upon having the pantry close. And the other thing about that is there's just certain days where we would come here with a truck. If we have pantries in both of these communities, they can be open multiple days. They can serve the community on a broader time frame. But we're also providing jobs because we'll be hiring people to run those pantries for us as well.
Okay. Now, my other question is, you said you've walked on property in Montezuma Creek. Now, have you walked the property in Monument Valley, and exactly where are you looking at, and how much acreage are you needing?
So we have been down to that area. We need 3/4 of an acre. We tried desperately to cut it back to a smaller piece of property, but we just can't make it fit the footprint. So what we need is 3/4 of 1 acre.
Now, you've mentioned money's being identified by the state of Utah, and you need to use that. Does it specifically have to be a land purchase, or could it be a lease? Either way, I'm sure you're still going to have to spend the money somehow rather than return it back to the state of Utah.
If we purchase property and do the construction of the project, that money will be spent for that. If there is a lease, that money won't be able to pass through. It'll go back to the state.
Okay. Now, here's my thought on this. It is very, very essential need to have food bank in our community. Not because just of the pandemic. This has been going on for years before the pandemic. And I know that you've been located at another place up the canyon there. I don't know what happened, but when I see an organization that has come before to a community and has been serving, and I see that the service is working and is needed. However, that program always falls backwards, I guess you could say, because they have no place to stay full-time establishment of a location. So I think it's important that the food bank, not just because of the pandemic, not because Navajo Nation is not working with us, but to serve the community of Monument Valley, Utah, and the families and their children, mainly the students of our schools. These are our feeder schools that need the services of the food bank. So I'm in support of that, and that's my position on that. And 3/4 of an acre, 1 acre, that's not much. I mean, so anyway, I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your remarks, and thank you for your support.
I guess, to be honest, where I'm hung up is, it seems to me like there's restrictions on the land that has to be used for education. I don't know the details of that. It seems like they went through some of that history before there were restrictions on that.
Is it education and public service? No, who knows that?
Yeah.
The restricted covenant when the land was deeded to us was for public services. So when the land was deeded to us, that's what.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Carol, you're speaking, sorry.
So when the land was deeded to the San Juan School District, the documentation that we have says that it must be used only for public services. And so that's what the language is referring to as public services.
Education specifically.
It doesn't specifically.
When
say
we
educational.
swapped the land in Monument Valley, we did a land exchange. That had to go all the way up through the governor's office and be signed and approved. And it was approved under that way of thinking that this is a public service. Healthcare does meet the requirement of public service. So my guess is food bank would also meet the
We're
requirements.
a 501c3, we're a nonprofit entity, we are not making money
So I don't.
from this
I think
endeavor.
That is a possibility, yes.
And I,
Well, I guess I'm disappointed that, you know, the Navajo Nation, the government that is over all the people there, serving all the citizens, is more ready to help you out there.
not knowing that entity as well as I probably should, this was a bigger challenge than I had thought would ever exist, because I felt like after the invitation from the vice president to reach out to them and the support that they were and the excitement they showed over the project, I thought it would be a totally different experience with them. So I certainly am open to doing or trying anything more with them. I'm just concerned with the time frame.
I have reached out to Delegate, Mr. Daniels, who's on the delegate council of the Navajo Nation. And I have spoken directly with President Nez. And both of them have committed that there is a process for this to work through, and there's potential that it could go through that process and be approved. President Nez was very clear that it needed to start at the local chapter house level, because he said it needs to start at the local level and work up from there. I think where the real discouragement comes in is in the time frame. Nobody can give any encouragement that that's anything but maybe even a 3 to 5, maybe even 6, 7 year process. Similar to what we may have seen when we did our gym in Montezuma Creek. That turned into about a 5-year process to acquire the permits and the leases to build our gym there next to our elementary school. So that's what's become really kind of discouraging in that conversation is, yes, you hear there's a process, but when you get inside and find out the details of the process, it's very long. And your time frame does not allow for that.
It does
So
not.
that's kind of what, one of the things. And there's no guarantee at the end of that process, but there is encouragement. So anyway.
The note that he just handed me was we had talked about here in Blanding have a community garden and a greenhouse, and also would be working with the Utah State Extension Service on gardening and teaching people to farm and some self-sufficiency through produce and different things. So it would not be just simply a pantry, but would try to be a resource for education to better the lives of those folks as well.
So a few thoughts. One of them is going back to the state. I mean, the state's the one that put that restriction on there with the deadline. And so I would think that they would extend that if you appeal to the state.
As far as the group that's controlling the money,
Yes.
we could hope that as well. And Jennifer can speak to that. We had a call with them last week, and we were given a pretty definite answer that next June it was not hope of an
So who
extension
is the
from
group
that.
that controls the money? Is that the state of Utah?
Department of Workforce Services, so the state legislature has handed the budget to them, being controlled by them. This is the first of this kind of a particular project that the state has done, so I think it's new to them as well. They took me to task last week when we had this conversation, thinking that I had been doing nothing this last year except sitting on the money, and I had to try to go back and explain to them that for one solid year, I truly have been working on this project, but just a bit of a challenge, and almost on every corner, we were able to show the Montezuma Creek and Blanding process. But the comment was, there are many eyes on you as you are doing this. And I said, well, please go back and tell them to open those eyes and let them know that we are working on this diligently, and we're trying the best we can with the time frame we have. So maybe we could, Mary, but last week we got to know.
So, and then another one of, part of me just thinks, that feels like there's an elephant in the room. If you and your group are working so hard to make this happen for the people in the Monument Valley area, and it doesn't seem that there is, that they want it.
They being
the tribe, the local chapter, whatever, that there would be some effort on their part. I mean, maybe they say they want it, but things, we won't work with you, then to me, that looks like maybe, you know, we say, well, okay, this is for you. Can you partner with us? I love the idea of having a job down there and the jobs that it will provide here in Blanding and also Montezuma Creek area. We need that so bad. Any kind of, but so I have a question about, so the fundraising sustains the food bank throughout the state. How do you guarantee that these jobs through fundraising will continue? Or, you know, indefinitely? How is that funding stream? And, you know, do we have a job for a few years and the funding goes
Yeah.
dry?
Again, it's a great question. I will tell you, we have a staff of 120 people, full and part-time. We've been at this, like I said, since 1904. We are probably one of the largest and most transparent nonprofits that you will see. Our fundraising is solid. From 46% of our fundraising comes from individuals. We have great support from corporations, from church groups, from foundations. We haven't had an issue with fundraising in all of these years, and I've been affiliated with the food bank for 30 years. First 15 years as a funder on the other side, the last 15 as being an employee. Fundraising and talking about hungry kids is a pretty easy task, and we've been very successful, even through the worst of times. Sometimes it's easier to fundraise when times are tough, because that's when people really step up to help. We've never had a deficit for money. We've never had a problem.
Have you ever had to lay off employees through attrition or anything else?
We have not.
And but that's my, you know, even when the clinic was built down there, it just didn't make sense to me that the Navajo Nation wouldn't partner in that and provide the land.
That's been my frustration as
Just
well.
my common sense that doesn't make sense to me. So I guess my other question would be is, how much land do we have that's not currently being used? And what are our, you know, the projections for possibly more student housing, other student services, and things that San Juan School District may actually need the land for? If we have so much land that we're never going to need it. But anyway, I don't know if we have those questions answered, how much is not used, and we would need, in my opinion, we would need to look at the land and propose a place for that would best suit our needs.
We'd
For
have
you
to go down and strategically look at the land. It's hard to really project future needs. There are some, I think I mentioned to the board not too long ago, that right now there's a push in 1A to try to establish a 1A baseball and softball league in the spring, which ties together with a 1A fall 8-person football league. It's all kind of evolving together. The 1A is trying to leverage, some have softball, some have baseball, some are converting to 8-player, 8-person football, and it's kind of a leverage all together. We have had at the Monument Valley High School a discussion that has come to me of baseball. There's been some interest of their student body. So we have baseball in a 1A school in our district in Monticello and have for a long time. So it's already presently here. So if I were projecting down the road, that would be one thing I would say. There's a chance in the near future that there's some interest in establishing baseball and softball. Those fields take some space if we were to build
And the
those.
parking for
They
those
do,
as
they
well.
also take some money. But with that said, I think there's also a possibility of needing more teacher housing if we have to. We'll do that when we have to. It's not a want. It would have to be an absolute need. But even with all of that said, there's probably a corner piece or an acre here that we could look at strategically to find. Some of the issues that would play into that is like access onto our roads. You know, how much traffic would a food bank bring? Would it certainly create a problem of just over, you know, too many cars passing through? Would we have to create, like with the college, they're creating their own entry in and out to try to avoid any of that? Those are the kind of things that we'd have to
And we
discuss.
would hope to be able to do that as well.
So, and that might be very feasible. So if the board wanted us to take that next step and just try to strategically look at it, see if there's a piece that can be identified, Tyrell, and we go through this again such as what we did with the college. We went through this with the college prior to this, so.
So, yeah, yes, what he said, probably, I think before anything we'd have to look at the land and what it is. I mean, personally myself, as a board member, I definitely feel like we are the guardians of that property for its specific purposes, which I know you understand. And with those interests in mind, and so does the project have to be completed in a year or secured within a year?
You just have to have it secured, and they have to have the majority of the expense towards the building and the project spent out.
So just a couple of things I would kind of like to clarify, because a little bit through the grapevine has come back to us that the board has been kind of accused that which we have expressed to some degree a little bit, why doesn't the nation take care of their own and we're not concerned about the children? And for my own self, I want to clarify that is not my standing at all. And I would like to think that was none of our standing. We have the
Well, as a
best
parent,
interests.
you're committed to your children.
Absolutely, that we have the children's interest in mind, but we also have the land in mind. And so that I would like to point out. But one thing that did come to me, an individual spoke to me that a possibility would be where the ambulance garage is sharing part of that land where the county facilities are currently at. So like we mentioned, I think we need to bring the maps, look at them, have a further discussion with that about the possibilities of where that could be. Because one thing in the past, we have had people approach us and sometimes, well, this is a better view for us, or this is a better this for something. You know, we're kind of giving you the land or leasing or whatever it may be, or selling, but you can't be extremely picky when we're saying this is what works best for us. But we kind of give that a little bit sometimes. That this will block our view, or this will do this to us, or this, and I'm thinking, time out. This is the school district's land. So I hope that we can keep that in mind. But I think from what everyone has said,
Some of the land out there, it's really important that everyone realizes, you know, Joe would know this well as a builder, but some of the land is leach field. It's designed to extend the leach field. I mean, the land may look open and it's not open at all. It has a purpose. So that's where you'd have to really look at it and make sure what's been designated and it's going to be utilized and what's not.
So I kind of, from what this is as an action item, I don't know that we are ready to make an action item, but I think collectively what everyone has said is that we will look into it further. We are not scheduled to have a board meeting in July, but by August, I think we could have the maps and everything, and we even possibly could go walk the land. Where's our meeting at August? Are we here?
But
We're
you have
here.
the schedule in front of you.
So, oh, yeah.
It's here.
So in September, anyhow, we may even have to just go down and do the September.
So I have a further question though. Nelson, it's your area. Is there something you could do to appeal to the people in your area to see if this is something they want? And if they want it, will they partner with the food bank to make it happen? Or do they not want it? You know, I can't imagine that people don't want this, anybody. And so is that somewhere we could go with?
It is important to know that they have passed resolutions that I think at least a couple different chapter houses, Aljado being one of them, and the Utah Navajo Commission for support for this project and asking the San Juan School District to partner with providing the land. So there has been local discussion and talk at the chapter house, which is their community government. And so there is input coming local. It is asking us to be involved by helping with land. And I think they're looking at it as, again, the timeline from going the other route would not meet the timeline of this project. So they're asking for this to happen this way. But I do want you to know the communities have been talking about this. and
They
have been
want it,
involved.
they just won't.
Yes,
They just won't.
I
use
have
their
received
land
calls,
for it,
I've
which
received calls from,
doesn't make any sense to me, but I would,
Mr. Rockwell of the Utah Navajo Commission has reached out to me. I have received calls on this. Yes.
Now,
So just a quick comment, maybe something you might be interested in looking into. When we were working on our land project down there, we worked with a consultant to try and expedite the 164 approval process with the Navajo Nation. And they mapped some things out that I'd be more than willing to share with you, some steps. If that's something, I don't know that if it will ultimately gain you what you want, but it's definitely something that I think is an option there to help get through the Navajo Nation Land Administration final approval process.
We would be more than happy to accept that help from you. And Tony has agreed as well to help us to see if there is some way he can help expedite it. I have a call tomorrow with the Lieutenant Governor, and we're gonna see if we can get some help from her. The last thing I want to do is go back to the governor and say, we couldn't make this happen. So I think the due diligence that all of us can do at this point in time, you know, we talk about the kids, we talk about the improvement of life, we talk about sports. These kids aren't going to have the opportunity for any of those things if they're malnourished. So food insecurity really is a basic starting point for these kids to have improved quality of life. It's a starting point for families to really not be challenged as much with food insecurity as other issues they have. And having come down here for the last 30 years, we've watched a lot of that. And we just want to be prepared as an organization to serve them better. And so that was the reason for us coming back to you today, is to ask you to reconsider. We'll continue our work. We'll have Tony help. If you can send me that information, would love to have it. And if you would do it via email, and Tyrell has my information, we can take a look at that. We'll continue our conversations and what we're doing on our side to move forward. But I would ask you to at least remember our time constraints.
sure. So our next board meeting is August 10th. We will put this back on our agenda. It's an item, but what I would request from your end is that we, especially from Trihurst, probably your proposed, where you've been out and walked it, what you're kind of thinking. And then we will have our map so that when we come, we have a better picture instead of just kind of shooting in the dark as to where we think or what might happen or where it would sit. So if you could explore those options.
And the challenge we have is getting our architect to create something on a piece of property when we don't know what the piece of property is. So if you look at the stuff that I gave you that was on Montezuma Creek, that gives you a good idea of what the building would look like, what the parking around the building would look like. Kind of gives you an idea of what that initial space would be. So I would ask.
How many acres do you have in Montezuma Creek?
We bought 1.5.
So you're a little bigger there than if we were talking.
So when you went down and walked the property, 'cause you spent yesterday there, correct? Down in Monument Valley or just
No,
Montezuma Creek?
Montezuma Creek.
Okay, so you actually, so I guess I would suggest that when we get the maps, that you send the maps to them so that they're able to look at kind of the layout of where everything sits, including where the college is going.
What if, I would like to do some work, if we're even talking strategically about a place, I'd like it to start with us, so that we look at where maybe a ball field, if we needed to put one in, and those kind of things. And what might be a place that wouldn't fall into any of those, and then we could reach out back and forth if wanted, or reach back out to Jeanette, and then give them an idea of what it might look like that.
Well, and I think too, if this is a piece of property that is removed from which we would assume it would be from the majority of the necessity that you need for whatever your expansion would be, we're fine with that. We don't need a front row seat. We don't need prime property. We will make it work. But recognize we would hope that the money we would pay you for that property could maybe go to that future development of the ballpark and to help us get the area in another way.
And any contract, if we were to move forward with the contract, could include any kind of a clause of, should the food bank ever not be here, the land was first right of return.
So we did that with our piece in Montezuma Creek, that first right of refusal, if for some reason we decided we needed to discontinue, that you would have the option for that to come back to you.
Anything else?
Any questions of Joe or of Tony that you might have in regards to construction or land or anything that perhaps I haven't answered. I really brought them for more than moral support.
Is that you, Nelson?
Yes, question.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask how long the Montezuma Creek property took?
To purchase,
Yes.
about 6 months, probably.
Now, is that with the Utah Navajo Trust Fund?
It was.
The land that you purchased, is that from the Utah Navajo?
Part of the delay on that was us trying to decide where it was exactly we wanted to buy. So the delay wasn't necessarily with them, but it was us determining the area that we wanted to be in.
And
So it's
also,
just-
and also the appraisal process and the survey process, all that kind of stuff. Took a little bit of time. But as
I'm
far as-
sorry, repeat that, Tony?
As far as the decision to sell, that took only 1 month basically for the board to decide, and also the Danette Advisory Committee. But then after that, it was authorized to go through the whole appraisal and survey process and all that kind of stuff. And the closeout, and so that the closings happened just like a month ago or so.
Okay, now I have a comment back to Board Member Mary Shumway. As you can see, Mary, we are talking of 2 different organizations. I wish it could be this simple or easier, like with the trust fund. But when you're dealing with Navajo Nation, it's complex, and Tony knows that. And the best that we could do is those local chapter resolutions, which we have already in place, and also with the Utah Navajo Commission. So we have two arms to the state and 2 arms to Navajo Nation that are in support of us. To expedite this is going to be difficult. Currently, Oljedo chapter does not have a chapter house of their own. It's been in that situation the last several years now, and they're still working on it. It's complicated. I don't know the governments of Navajo Nation why it's so complex. I just wanted you to know that and understand that it's not that simple. Thank you.
I just wanted to add, if it's all right, that the key is ownership, land ownership, and that's what their first preference is. They could lease here and there, but that's not ideal for them. With the Navajo tribe, they're in full support. The local chapter is in full support. The council delegate is in support. The central government and the Navajo Nation president and vice president is in support of the food bank. We are with the trust fund also. But it's a lease situation, and if you don't know this, the Navajo land is not owned by the Navajo tribe. It's technically owned by the federal government, and we have to go through federal procedures, and so it's going to take a long time. I think the school district owns all of their land, as I understand it. The only piece of property that you do not own is the Montezuma Creek Elementary School, and that's on Navajo Nation land. And it took 8 years for approval to get that approval from the school district to build that gymnasium. And I'm not saying it's going to take that long, but it's a long process. So anybody that's trying to build on Navajo Nation land, you have to go through the survey process, environmental assessment, and a number of different requirements that they have. It does take time, but in the end, Navajo Nation does not own it, so all they can do is basically sublease it to whoever wants to lease it. And that's not ideal for them. And they have a 1-year time left, so they're actually after land ownership. And then 1980s, 1990s, SIPLA used to have every section 16 and every section 32 for school purposes. And in the 80s and 90s, I don't know whose idea it was, but a bunch of entities got together, the Navajo Nation, the state of Utah, the federal government, different parts of the federal government. And there was a big land exchange that was brokered. And it was finalized in 1998, that land exchange happened. And so there's no more federal or no more private land, no more civil land on the reservation at all. That all got gathered together and put elsewhere. And so the only private land that's still there is any private land that was grandfathered in. So so Goulding still has their private land, and the church, the Episcopal Church still has their private land, and there's a few private pieces still there, but there's no more private land to be had. The 20 acres across from the high school, that was one of the last pieces that happened in 1998 when the land exchange happened. One of the things that the tribe had us do was to say, okay, we're going to accept all of this land exchange except for that 20 acres across from the high school. And they basically told us, you, the state of Utah, you're going to build us a welcome center and build a vendors village, and then turn over all that stuff, the buildings and the land to us. And so, which we did. UDOT built the welcome center, and we built the vendors village. We also paid for the upgrades in the power lines, the 3-phase right there in that school property area. And then also work with the county to put that road in, the fire station there, and the clinic and all that kind of stuff. So put a lot of that infrastructure in so that it would take on future development at, where the power needs would be a lot higher. And we even had to pay for what's called reclosers, which is because the power source comes from Kayenta to Money Valley. And so we had to make sure that if there, to prevent any breakdowns in power to the school district area, we had to pay for upgrades back to Kayenta also. So there's quite a number of things that happen and a lot of it is because the school district is private land. That's the last piece of private land that's available anywhere in that area, basically. So anyway, just
one thing to add to that, and I appreciate that information. I filled in some gaps that I wasn't aware of, some things there. Do be aware though, I mean, I think we've got to strategically look down the roadways and start putting things in place, because what we've determined is as more infrastructure is built in Monument Valley, it seems like the school district has been the solution to overcome the root of the problem. Is the timeliness of going through the process in the other areas, but the school district land is limited. And I can tell you, we just went through it with the higher education. There is getting to be there's still a little there. And I think if the board chooses, we can find a place for a food bank, but it can't just be continually, because it's going to end. And at that point, there's going to have to be some kind of change, or it's going to be a 5 to 8 year process for anything to happen down there. And I don't know if that's going to sustain the community the way they want to be sustained or not, but school district land is limited. It's not endless. And anyway.
And please know we appreciate that. We recognize that. And we appreciate the time and the effort you put in to even consider this as we've gone through this past year. I think you recognize that our goal is to help the families in this area and continue to strengthen them. So any consideration you can give to us, we will appreciate, but we also will understand if the answer comes back to us is no. And then we'll expect that you will understand we've tried almost everything we can to bring that kind of help to the area. So now I guess we both have tasks to do between now and August. We'll look forward to hearing from you. If you have questions, you certainly know how to reach me. We appreciate your time today, and I appreciate your attention to this, and would ask that you please give us consideration to know that our only goal is to make it better for the folks in the area. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to comment to Tony as well, that I appreciate you filled in a few gaps for me as well. And then the superintendent made it, a point of land. And it's ironic that we're having this discussion today, because at 6 o'clock at the event center over to Utah State, SITLA is presenting and having discussion on their proposed land exchange. It will be, what they're proposing will be the it'll be the 6th largest land exchange in the history of Sitla land. And the one that Tony talked about has now caused us some problems. If we had Sitla land dotted around on the Navajo Nation, we'd have a bunch of options that we don't have anymore. They've taken that away from us. And to clarify a little bit, I don't know if San Juan School District land is technically considered private land. I mean, it's not. It's San Juan School District land because we can tax private land, and the land that's school district owns throughout the county does not get taxed. We can tax private land, which we have 8% of in San Juan School District. And so when we levy the property tax, there is very little land that's being taxed to be able to provide income for the students. But anyway, they're proposing this land trade to trade out 150,000 acres out of San Juan County. Some of that will be traded within the county, but the rest of it to another, I believe, 18 counties. And the problems that that has created for us. And another thing to note, so if anybody can go to that meeting at 6 o'clock. And another thing to note on that is there's not another state in the country that has had a land exchange like any of the 5 in the Senate in Utah, and they've all been in southern Utah. The land continues to go, and it creates poverty every time the federal government owns land. It is an area where there's high poverty, and so these land issues are so serious as far as our limited amount of land there and our responsibility for that land. And in future, once it's gone, you know, it's gone. Nobody's taking any more of it. So it's a very heavy consideration.
Well, and please know that we appreciate the regard that you have for that and the issue that is first for you guys is to conserve the land, and we appreciate that. So thank you. I will take my entourage and the audience that you have. And
appreciate the dedication to this project and to the dedication to the people here in San Juan County, because we need all the resources.
We'll
that we
continue
can
our
get,
work
and we
on
love the jobs.
Thank you for that. We so appreciate it.
The jobs are awesome.
Okay, have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.
Anna, you get to be first.
Yay, thanks.
And just to note to the board, we asked Anna and Paul, because their fields are more specialized, to kind of just give the presentation instead of us asking you the questions. So you're on.
All right. Well, I went through the same model that everybody else uses when they present. So our highlights for the year, we served 490,817 meals this year. That is $27.89 per day. So we serve a lot of meals every day in our school district. Our reimbursement amounts, both federal and state, were higher this year than they've been in any of the past 8 years. Part of that is that they gave us more in our reimbursement. So we'll see. We do not know what those numbers are for next year yet. So we're unaware of what we're going to be seeing. But our lunch counts were higher this year. We had 50,000 more lunches this year than last year. Some of that is kids being in schools. So it's hard to judge things right now until we get back to somewhat normal.
You ship
We
meals
did let people pick up meals, and we did ship out. So
why is such a big change?
So we just have, I don't know, we had a lot of extra meals this year.
Okay.
But it was pretty close to on par with what it was pre-COVID. So we're pretty close there. We completed our USDA annual 5-year review. It's called an annual review, but it's really every 5 years. So we had no significant findings. We didn't have any fiscal action findings. We had a couple of clerical issues that needed to fix, how we report a couple of things, how we track a couple of things with our school secretaries. We made those changes while they were here, and they were happy with those. So that went very well. And we have several kitchens that are getting some necessary equipment upgrades currently this summer. So some of that is happening, and it was very necessary, and we're really excited about that. So those are our highlights for the year. In our challenges section, half of our schools had someone retire or leave this year. That's a lot for us. We had a lot of retirement this year. We anticipate more next year. We're already aware of 2 or 3 that are retiring. So we have had a lot of trouble finding new staff. We did move up a little bit on the pay scale this year for our regular staff, which is excellent. I'm hoping it will help us to fill some of those spots. We have 6 open spots currently, which is a lot. Our biggest concern though is LaSalle. We do not have anyone in LaSalle right now. We don't have any subs in LaSalle. We have no one. We haven't had any applications. We are hitting the road hard for LaSalle. We have a couple of options and thoughts in case we don't find anyone in LaSalle. Neither one of them we love, but we do have a plan in place. So worst case scenario, there is a plan. The AB schedule has continued to be a little bit of a challenge for our high school students. The lunch hours drop back further, so it's a little more challenging for them to be out in their contracted 6-hour time. We're still struggling a little bit with that, but usually with people taking time off and being gone a little bit here and there, it kind of fixes itself. We do have a few employees that are over because of it. Some of it dealt with lack of staff. We did have some open positions through the year, especially at Blanding Elementary this year. We had a hard time getting subs. They're just district-wide in everything. We had a hard time getting subs. There's just a lot of trouble right now with that. But we are working with our individual schools to try and find ways to help them prioritize better, make some changes to their cleaning schedules, figure out what's necessary and what's not every day, so we can try and get them out the door on time. So, but most of them are working really hard to do that. We only had a couple of places where that was a real problem. And this year we're having some commodity issues. As you've heard, I'm sure, lots of different plants are burning down and falling apart, and we're losing a lot of commodity product. The commodities that we get from the state, from the USDA, we've lost a large chunk of those. Probably half of what we typically get, we will not be getting. So that is a challenge. Trying to find replacements for those, hoping replacements are available for those. Chickens, turkeys, beef, all those things, main staple items are getting very difficult to find. So hopefully we will not have a problem with that. We're not going to anticipate a problem, but we did lose a lot of our commodities. So we'll have to buy those items, whereas in the past we would have received them from the Brown Box program, and we will not this year. And then goals. We will be implementing our alternative breakfast model this year in secondary schools. They gave us a waiver last year. It was supposed to implement last year. It's based on a state legislature. They made a law a couple of years ago that every school has to have a secondary breakfast model. So if a student misses the first breakfast, they still have an option for breakfast later in the morning. In elementary schools, we've been doing that for a while. Kids come late, they're welcome. We feed them if they need to be fed. But in high schools, we're going to be implementing that this year. We're going to start some tests at all the high schools throughout the year, trying different things, seeing what works, what doesn't, seeing if different schools need different ideas or what happens. And then by hopefully the time we get done with spring break, we'll be ready to fully implement that program. We have to have it ready to go by May. So we're not in a major hurry, but we want to make sure we do it right and it's a little less stressful on everybody. Because we don't know what we're going to expect. If we're going to have a lot of kids, or basically our alternative model in high schools will be they can pick up breakfast in a bag between first and second period. So figuring out how many kids that will be and how long it will take and all those things is a challenge, and we'll work through those through our tests and figure out what works. We're also going to be completing the review of the district wellness policy, and we'll be presenting any changes or updates to you for approval. And we are now required to track all of our food purchases of items that are grown in Utah. There's a new requirement for supplemental liquor tax money that we have to show that a portion of how much we spent total on food was purchased Utah grown foods. So we are working out a way to track those. And we're looking for Utah suppliers and some of that thing. The state is trying to identify some. We're not sure if they're all going to come to us or not. It's a little easier for schools that live up north to get those and get them delivered to schools. It's a little harder for us to find a local grower who can deliver to all 12 of our schools. But we are working on those things. Right now our milk is used, all of our milk, our shelf stable and our regular Meadow Gold is Utah grown. Some of our produce is, so we're just working out how to track that. But it has to be at least 8% of our total food costs has to be spent with Utah grown products. They have to be minimally processed Utah grown products. So it's a very small list of things we can buy, but we're working on that. But that's it. That's all I have. Questions, thoughts?
Just appreciation.
Yeah, thank you.
Things are going well.
We're on top of it. It's awesome.
You know, I call you when I have questions.
That's right, and I appreciate that, yes. I'm always happy to take questions whenever they
That's
come.
Great. No, somebody keep that a lot of pain.
Yeah, we have a lot to do this year. We thought last year was busy. I think this year will be just as busy.
Sounds like it. Thank you very
You
much.
did a
Alright.
great job. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, have a great meeting.
Safe travel.
Okay, Mr. Palmer, come on up. How are you?
Well, how are you guys?
Good. Thanks.
Good. First of all, I just have to say I really love my job. As crazy as that is, I really do love it. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of challenges and you have to think outside the box quite a bit of time. And I involve a lot of teammates and team members here in this room and outside that help. But I really do love my job. So just wanted to go through the presentation. Talking about special education numbers. This will be the last presentation that I give about assessment, and I'm okay with that. So I did you guys get an updated ACT? Those numbers just came
If you
available
refresh,
yesterday.
Actually,
Okay.
that was just available today, so
Yeah,
I don't know how recently
Did you
you
put it on a
refreshed.
slide?
I did.
Oh,
Yes.
on your side.
So it's our.
So
You
if it,
refresh,
refresh
sure.
it.
yeah, if you hit refresh, it's a Google Doc, so it should update for you. It looks like from our numbers last year to this year, we did increase about 14 students. I have my last year's presentation as well in special education that we are currently serving. And so that's pretty, I don't know what normal growth is for that or not. So we're working to exit students as they qualify to exit. We're working to find students as they qualify to be found with special education. Do you have any questions with those numbers at all?
I just want your ACs for a second.
Oh yeah, perfect. So that's the second slide. I kind of jumped ahead so you can look there. In comparison, just a couple things to point out in comparison. The district average from last year to this year dropped by 0.6. This year's average is 17.0. But then you can see, I tried to break that down by race or ethnicity and different categories. And then the composite score is that first one of mean score.
We had more of a drop with our Americans.
Yeah, so I would think that, you know, obviously we haven't delved a lot into this data where it's so fresh, but I would imagine this has a lot to do with being out of the building for a year and 5-6 months. And so working, I know schools are working. Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, I think there's some real challenges there. And then if you look at the white the white, it looks like it's holding fairly steady right in there. So there's just, I think that is a big reason for that drop is just being out of school. Those students who are 11th graders this year were out all of their 10th grade year and 4th quarter of their 9th grade year. So when you think about high school concepts, they missed a good portion of those high school concepts that were being assessed on the ACT. Goals, let me get to the correct one. Yeah, goals. We are still working to make sure that we hold all of our initial IEP meetings within 45 days after receiving permission to assess or to administer tests. So that includes school psych testing, that includes cognitive testing, that includes if there's speech or OT or PT that's requested by in that evaluation. So just coordinating those. Sometimes we do get the testing taken care of relatively quickly, and then it's a matter of getting the parents in a hope meeting. So we are working through those challenges. COVID did help us realize that we can hold those meetings over phone or Zoom or Google Meets. And so we're working to do that. That did it do better. All of this schools in our district that are TSI are in there mostly because of IEP or students served by an IEP not scoring high enough on end of level testing. So we're working to build that as well. Now there is a certain percentage, 1% of our students that are served by an IEP that do qualify for an alternate assessment. So this would be everyone else that's served by an IEP, just really working to increase their proficiency rates. And then we want to, I'm working closely with the state on our third goal to figure out, I believe our preschool programs are meeting the needs of our students in really good ways. These indicators that were measured on here is all about survey results that and results to assessments that our teachers do administer. So we're working to figure out exactly what that looks like. And potentially next year, I'll be talking about being accepted to a grant through the state that would provide additional supports for our preschools. So that would be, it's called Becoming High Quality. I really want to work with the preschool team to get their buy-in for that, because it will take some additional time and having additional supports in the building for them. And then we do, every year, the state administers a parent involvement survey, and this goes back to specifically, how do parents feel that they were involved in the creation or development of an IEP, or if there's a reeval or an annual, do they have input? And we've not scored as high as the state would like us to. And so we're going to work with our teachers to ensure that parents are involved better, that parents understand what that involvement looks like, and working to increase those. So those are kind of the goals that we'll put forward as a special education department to the state. It's called the Utah Program Improvement Plan for Special Education. So I submit that every June, and I'm in the middle of that right now. It's due June 30th. So those are kind of our goals there. I'd like to talk about celebrations. We have one teaching position that is not filled, and then we have a speech position that is not filled. And so we're working on those. So fingers crossed, hopefully good things happen and we find people to fill those positions. But that being said, last year at this time, we had more open positions. So that's a celebration. Our teachers are amazing. They are here for the students. They're here for parents. They're here to make good things happen for students. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate getting calls from them. They'll call and ask advice, and I'll try to connect them with the right resources to provide the help or assistance they need, or ask the right questions. And so I super appreciate them. And then the itinerant team, so our school psychs, our speech, OT, our physical therapy, they've all been awesome to work with, and they're really there for the students to help them have access to the general education curriculum as much as possible and provide opportunities for students. And so obviously this is not just a me show. I give them huge props on that. So I told you about one of our challenges, and then we just are really working hard to increase our proficiency rates of special education students on end of level testing. We really want them to rise to their fullest potential and ability, and we know that they have it in them. So we're working to do that. Any questions or feedback?
Nelson, you or Lucille, any questions? You did awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate your work and what you do. So do
Thank
you
you.
just want to stay there?
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
We'll move on our agenda.
Okay, perfect.
So this is number 3, over the counter standing order policy.
So I listened to the board meeting last month and took Steve's feedback in there. So hopefully you'll see that the changes I made are consistent across the board, where we use the generic, not having it capitalized. And then in parentheses, I have the name brands capitalized of what we might potentially purchase there. I think that was the feedback that we got last time. So those changes have been made. Well,
Anything from anybody, changes? Thanks so much.
yeah, you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I really do think that would be a good benefit
Okay,
for us.
great. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Superintendent, why don't you just do
4 and 5.
4 and 5, yes.
4 and 5 together.
Good together.
Both of these items are, they are part of the federal aid application, we are required to develop a Native American policies and procedures manual that states how we will assess equal access for our Native students to all programs, not just the classroom curriculum, but to programs, and how we will assess how that is working, how effective it is. And then also, we are also required to show that official questions or comments or concerns that come before the board are officially responded to. Now, with COVID and the situation that we've had with fewer people attending our meetings and only attending virtually for the most part, we have not seen the number of questions come in. And many of our questions were actually fielded as we made visits to chapter houses in the past. So in the past, we would go in person, do a presentation, and we would get quite a few questions. And so you see quite a drop in the number of questions. There's only 4, where in past years, there's been as many as 20 or 20 or more. And I think that will return as we get back to a little more normal situation. But both of these are, we're doing both of these as they are stated in our Native American Policies and Procedures Manual. Number 4 is the answer to the questions. Number 5 is the extent to which Native American children participate on an equal basis with non-Native children. And you have the data. We collect that data all year long, and then we gather it. And there may be a better way to look at this, and if there's ever a suggestion or a way, we certainly could revise our Native American policies and procedures. We take other data as well, because we have to have other data for our OCR reports and other things, but then we take out this data out of the data we collect. We collect our fee waiver data, we collect a number of data, a number of different categories of data. But here you have a breakdown of participation, and we try to have all of your extracurricular activities. We try to have your CTSOs, your CTE clubs. We're looking at also your Sterling Scholar, National Honor Society. So we're looking at those things there, and you can see. Now, the makeup of our district is interesting, and you're very much aware of it all. But when we look at access to activities, the community of Blanding certainly falls under the spotlight, under the microscope, because if we are looking at access in Monument Valley or Montezuma Creek, those schools are 99% Native American. If there's a program and it's being accessed by a Native student. Monticello has very low percentage of Native American students. So if those programs are being accessed, it makes sense that a very high percentage of those students are going to be non-Native students. Blanding is the one that is about 43 to 44% Native, and so it still is, the majority still is non-Native, but that's where you see a very much closer breakdown, where when you look at are all students finding equal access to these programs, you will see that it just obviously takes you to the microscope, goes to that community. And then so you're looking at ARL and San Juan High. When you break those schools down, you will see that there are places where you go, wow, that looks very strong. There's places where it doesn't look as strong. And then if you historically track it, and you look at it from year to year, there's places where it kind of ebbs up and ebbs down and ebbs up. And so I don't know that I can bring before you any real clarifying statement or comment. I can tell you there's places where it looks like we aren't seeing as much interest by our Native students or our non-Native students, but I don't know that that is a historical thing. I can see places where we see some really strong participation of Native students. So anyway, that's probably all I can speak to of these 2 items, and with enough, and then I'll try to field any questions if you have
Any questions? Are all of the students counted one time if they are, they either identify as Native or non-Native, but
they are registered, so they go into a database as Native or non-Native. So yes, that's where that comes from. And then our advisors and our coaches work with the school administration to submit their participation rosters. And from there, how they were registered is pulled to say native or not.
Lucille or Nelson, do you have any comments or questions?
Okay, this is Lucille. I do. Are they, do they all have census numbers?
We would not know that. That would not be part of this data, whether they're all census or not. It's just by their home language survey and by how they register, that's how they're going into our data bank as native or non-native. It could be Hispanic, they could be other, there's other categories. So when we say non-native, we're saying all the other that are out there, not just necessarily white. So anyway.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to our spend plans. Is that you or?
I have that as well. And again, this is just, as I tried to say in my little description to you, I'm certain that revising spend plans is here as long as we have spend plans. We proved over 100 of these, and there's going to always be a small, well, I wouldn't use the word small, there's always going to be a number, I hope it's a small number, that will either coaches change sometimes and a new coach comes in and sees that they want to do something slightly different or they want to do that. But sometimes there's just, they didn't foresee something or something was identified as not accurate. So we do have, in this case, you have 3 spend plans on here for revision, and you have Monticello High School submitting a softball spend plan for a program that all during the 90s was in place at Monticello. When baseball started, softball started. But then because of lack of participation, the program was not in place. And now, as of this last year, there's real strong desire and interest in the program being reinstated. In fact, I think they had 5 or 6 girls that played on the baseball team this spring. So that's pretty strong support right there, that there's interest in this program coming back. To drop a program and bring it back is not terribly uncommon. I mean, even this year in MES, we are not going to have a drill team next year because of a lack of participation. But the following year, you might see a spend plan for drill team to come back. And so, but be aware that's what's bringing the softball on, is there's been a number of girls petition the administration to bring that program back.
Another question that I maybe should know or just can't remember. So it's just listed on here as the estimated amount of fees paid for by required group fundraising. So if they're going to hold a fundraiser during the year that is required, it has to be on their spend plan, or they cannot do a required fundraiser the entire year. They can't have a spontaneous one like, hey, Jeff, you know what'd be a really good idea to do this year, you know, a coach or a parent or somebody has an idea. They can't do it if they require everybody to participate. Is that right? But if they have one that they can choose to be involved in?
There's 3 kinds of fundraisers that we have trained everybody on. And a required team fundraiser must be on a spend plan, because any profit from that fundraiser has to be divided up amongst the team members and help offset their fees that have been incurred.
Okay.
The other 2 is an individual optional. So that is something that you could see happening, where you could see a coach say, hey, we're going to do this. It's completely optional. Some of you I know would like some help with your fees. If you'd like to be in my room at 3 o'clock today and I'll give you some information, we're going to do this. That's optional. Does not have to be
on the spend plan, and people don't have to do it, but the ones who do get that money.
And that money is whatever the individuals raise goes to them. And we have identified a 3rd type of a fundraiser that is called, basically, we've called it a program support fundraiser. And it has to be optional, but it is a program support, and they just basically ask for volunteers to help them. Now, I will tell you that generally those volunteers helping are kids that are associated with that program. But we have been very clear in our instructions, you cannot make it required. The minute you make it required, it now goes back to be a required.
And
But-
this one's called which?
We call it a program support fundraiser. So like you might see a dinner that's offered in the summer by an organization. That's a program support. Those kids cannot be required to be there, their parents cannot be required to be there. But they often will ask for volunteers to help, and I will tell you, we have a culture of our parents and our students being pretty quick to step up and help, even when it's classified as 100% optional volunteer.
Yeah.
They've helped because
People
now
are
I
more
have
willing
seen
to
it.
help when
I
it's
will say
optional.
that especially I think in the river region, we have seen a drop in fundraising. And in some places in the mountain region, we've seen a drop in fundraising. There's still fundraisers and we're still trying to follow our district. We still say you must follow district policy. But we have seen some reduction in fundraising. But yes, what has to be on a spend plan is the first one. The required team fundraiser must be reported on the spend plan. And that is so that even our fee waiver parents know and our non-fee waiver parents know. There was some concern when parents went to the state and issued some concerns that, for instance, with cheerleading, there was a lot of concern expressed that I did not know when I was told that my daughter brought home the form back that the cost for cheerleading was $1,600, I ruled it out. Then to come find out that out of that $1,600, 500 of it or 700 of it was fundraised. If I'd have known that, that would have reduced the amount I would have been able to maybe come up with. So even the non-fee waiver parents were very interested in any fees, any fundraising that was going to go towards fees had to be part of the spend. So you could see that in here, if it says 0, the coach is not planning on any required fundraisers, but many of them do have a sum added towards it.
But we'll see fundraisers in those.
If it's
Under
a
those.
required fundraiser, yes.
If it's required, it's on here.
So
But we will see fundraisers in groups that are not on here.
you could have an
They are just
individual come
optional.
by and try to
Okay.
sell you, you could have
All
an
right, I
individual
think
try to sell you a Little Caesar's
I think I
pizza.
finally got that.
A Little Caesar's pizza, and that
Okay.
might be an individual optional one, and that would not be
But
on here. They're
Now, let
raising
me
their.
clarify, when you said they can ask for it, they really can't ask for it. Can't they put out, I mean, with our fundraiser, can't they just say, hey, we're going to do this if you're interested in participating?
Say, when
I
I
mean,
say,
there's just a little bit different way of doing that. Oh, hey, I call you up, hey, will you, I'm
they
gonna
can
ask you
oh,
to
you
be
mean when
part
I
of this
said they can
fundraiser.
ask for volunteers?
Yeah.
They
or
have to
just-
be clear in the instructions that this is an optional
So they give out the
program
information.
support. And yes, and
If somebody
you,
wants to volunteer, they will
if you would
accept.
like, you may volunteer to help us.
All right, I
It's
guess
not
that
option-
ask
It's not
word
required, yeah,
gets me,
they have to inform, maybe a
They have
better
to-
word is
they
inform.
have to give notice that people are volunteer for it.
And I realize that there might be sometimes that's a iffy line,
Yeah.
but I don't know how you ever fix it.
Right, so then in the case of class fundraisers, and I'm told this has been going on forever, and the spend plans hasn't changed that they do assign a class or, otherwise, that they do assign people to bring certain things, but maybe we're just using wrong terminology and they really are, in a way, the families, the parents, the student are volunteering to buy things for the concession stand.
No, the way we have talked about that is they should be putting that in a spend plan. I'll continue to work on that if that's not happening. If there's a class fundraiser, that is a class fundraiser. There's a strong implied message that everyone brings something that turns into a fee.
So they can't have parents donating things to the concession stand.
We've tried to move away from
Okay. I am being told that happens.
it. It probably
Still
still
happening.
is. It It's a tough thing to move away from culture, but we're working on it. You might still find stuff, but we are trying to move away from, anytime you start to imply that, then it sends a message to all kids.
So they're
and our-
supposed to use the money from the fund that they already have.
Yep.
Buy all the supplies for the concession stand and then sell them, right? Pass that along. That's where they get those things. All right, I think I understand it.
It's
Okay.
definitely a challenge.
So you get to do number 7, Mary.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry, Nelson.
Now, who qualifies for fee waivers? And then my second question is, are there any activities involving heritage language other than what's that?
Yes.
Unity Group?
Waivers, to qualify for a fee waiver student, you do have to submit your financial information and paperwork. And we in registration work very diligently to get that to all parents. We are dotting every I. I've worked very carefully with our principals on that. So, but parents must return the information. And I will be honest with you, in our river schools, our river region schools, just 3-4 years ago, I think 4 years ago now, we had a culture of everyone being fee waiver. If you remember, we didn't, and we've moved away from that when this all changed. When spend plans came in, we moved away. So we are still educating and working with our parents to ensure that they understand they have to bring that paperwork back. It's getting established. It's doing better than it was 2 years ago. But that's still, my principals, Mrs. Schaefer, Mrs. Fife, still say there's some parents that they're not a fee waiver, they do not have a fee waiver student until they have been deemed approved, and they have to submit paperwork before that can happen. So fees are being charged if they haven't done that, even if they think they will qualify. I will tell you that in the end, though, we have still had a very high percentage of fee waiver students in our river region. I think it's pushing well up into the upper 80s, 85 to 87. I don't have the exact number, but I could get it to you. But we are seeing the majority of parents their students are qualifying. And so we are paying for all fees. We've set aside, if you remember in our budget, we set aside $300,000 to pay for fees. And heritage language, yes, and it has activities and things built in that are part of the fee waiver program. Each school runs a little differently, but they do take field trips, they do some things, and they have to be mindful of fee waivers. If they're not part of the spend plan, then they can't just throw out a field trip automatically, because that's a fee. So they have to build those, they have to be thinking ahead. And if they're gonna have field trips, they have to build them into the spend plan or revise the spend plan. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. One more question. So the fee waiver forms, is that a district thing or is that a state?
Well, we get, the forms are actually a resource given to us by the state. We put our logo on them and we put them a part of our registration materials. But yes, we receive those applications all through the state.
So it's a state requirement?
Yeah, if you, oh yes, it's a state requirement, yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's move to number 7. Mary, that is you, the delegate assembly.
All right, so the delegate assembly that the USDA has, Utah School Boards Association sponsors or holds, will be on August 27th. That's a Saturday morning, as usual. They always have that meeting on a Saturday from 8:30 in the morning until 1 or 2 o'clock. And that is where each district in the state of Utah that belongs to Utah School Boards Association has an opportunity to send one delegate to vote on behalf of our school district. Now at our January conference, we elected 2 members at large to represent San Juan, Brand, Carbon, and Emory. So they will be there. The Those two delegates will be there to represent all 4 school districts, but we get one person to represent us, Brand gets one.
So your
Marvin, and
district
so
gets
we-
2 votes, basically.
No, I mean,
Right.
those, whoever the 2 are, they vote on behalf of us, but so one district can technically have 3 votes, or 2 districts can have 2 votes,
Okay.
but every district gets 1 vote. The pre-delegate assembly is held the night before and is not part of the voting, it's an informational meeting. And so we just need to designate officially somebody. We run into trouble in the past by not having somebody in some of those districts, not have that on their calendar and prepared to attend that meeting. And so our rural districts have missed some votes sometimes. I've attended that in the past. I'm willing to do that again. If somebody else wants to do it, we can do
Do you
that
have to
as
go
well.
anyway?
I do.
So do you mind going for us? Or do you want somebody
I
else to go?
don't. It's
Okay.
it's up to the board, and if somebody else has an interest in it as well, that's fine too.
You're a right. What do you guys think?
I thought if you're going to go anyway. That's the word.
I'm happy to do it, being there anyway, in conjunction with the USDA meeting, so it makes sense unless there was somebody else who had an interest.
Something falls through, I'll,
Okay.
if I know, like,
Okay.
2 weeks in advance. Okay. Nelson, we still, are you good with Mary attending?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Are you okay with Mary representing us at the pre-delegate assembly?
Oh, yes, I think Mary is a great person to represent us.
Okay,
Well, thank you.
And I totally agree.
there you go.
Right.
Okay, we're done.
Okay.
Thank you
I
much.
will do that.
All right, Tyrell, are you ready for travel reimbursement rates?
Yeah. So the attached form on there is our travel voucher with the proposed changes. You can see, so our current rates, what we're looking at is our meal rates. That our current rates are 8, 11, and 17. And so that travel voucher, that proposed travel voucher would just give a $4 per day increase, 2 to the breakfast, 1 to the lunch, and 1 to the dinner. And our February board meeting, when we approved our spend plans, or March board meeting, we did increase the meal rate for our students for activities for lunch. And so we felt that, and we moved that from 10 to 12. And with, our inflationary factors that are coming into play here, and I don't know the last time we adjusted these meal rates. Superintendent and I have had multiple discussions about it, and have proposed this increase of $4 per day, but wanted to present that to the board and see if you had any input or discussion regarding this, but this is what we would recommend here. If superintendent has
Yeah,
anything to add.
let me add just a little to the travel mile.
Oh, yeah.
Where this
Thank
does
you.
not show an increase in that. It was 43, it's still 43. And that is pretty low on some, you look at some schedules in the federal schedule, that's pretty low. The conversation Tyrell and I had, and as we looked around the state with the other districts, there are other districts that the dilemma of driving your own personal car and being reimbursed versus driving the district car is always kind of a little bit of a complicated issue, because risk management does prefer that we drive a district car. They realize that you're not going to have everyone in district cars, and they allow for that. They allow for personal cars. And then our policy encourages district cars, but then we have in our policy that if you're going to be traveling all over, or you're going to be all over the Salt Lake Valley, or you need to do this personally, it might be in our best interest to take it personally. Well, so we talked quite a bit, and just we still want to have the incentive be to take a district school card. And we felt a little bit like if we raise the travel money, it does add a little more incentive to your personal car. We did see one district out there that, how did they, without naming the district, but how did they put it together? They actually had a completely different reimbursement.
Yeah, so if there was a district vehicle available and you still elected to drive your personal vehicle, their mileage reimbursement was much lower. If there was not a district vehicle available and you were still being asked to travel and you had to take your personal vehicle, the mileage reimbursement rate was much higher.
And that showed they were wrestling with the same issue. But we've never had a time when a district car is not available. We can always have a fleet. So we've been able to do that. So we just felt like, anyway, after we visited, we thought maybe the best thing to do is just leave it where it's at. It's hitting a good balance. It does reimburse you for your costs. It certainly doesn't add to any incentive to take your personal car, which we don't want it. But it is still fairly low. If the board doesn't like that, you certainly could kick it up. But that's why, in our estimation, we left the mileage untouched. So just be aware of it.
And with the small change or proposed change for the meals, as long as I think, we raise this, it's easy to spend money. As long as that's sustainable in the future to, $4 is not much, but every little bit over time, this is a little bit, let's add to that. So that's my concern, is just, I don't want to do something that's not sustainable. And but if you feel like that's sustainable and we will be able to do that, it depends on how much traveling there is. And hopefully with the Zoom option during COVID, we're doing more of that and haven't gone completely back to always in person. I think there's a good mix, and COVID has shown us that we are, that we can do that if people are willing to stay home for some things. Sometimes it's better to be in person.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes.
Nelson, hold on just 1 second. Steve's gonna make a comment and I'll call on you.
Okay.
I guess I don't know that I agree with holding the 43 cents steady. In a way, it's kind of pushing more of the travel burden onto needs. I don't know when that rate was made, but cost of vehicles, cost of fuel, cost of everything has increased substantially.
Gas.
In that sense that thinking like, and I don't know, like for school board members, like if somebody's coming in from a remote location, if their district car is available for them to make that trip around Valley, but that's putting more of a on that in that case too. That's not adjusted.
Do you have a thought of what would be appropriate? Would you like the federal? I think the federal.
Here's what I would suggest is for to and from. I like the idea that we're encouraging the fleet vehicles because we have them. The school district already has the expense of owning them, of maintaining them. We have that expense, and risk management prefers a risk or a district vehicle. So I like the idea that people aren't encouraged to take their private vehicles. And that's, I remember discussions about that before, but I agree with Steve on, with Nelson and Lucille, they're at their homes. They don't have an opportunity if they're coming to a meeting in person to bring a district vehicle, unless I guess they went to the schools, which aren't that far away, and then they could bring a vehicle from there. So I was about to suggest that maybe it could be for board members traveling to and from school board meetings, that just that will be adjusted. So it would affect Lori, it affects Steve and I the least. In fact, affects me not at all because I don't ever turn in mileage for a school board meeting.
Nelson, do you want to comment, please?
Thank you for keeping us in mind. I am sitting down here by the Arizona state line, and gas is over $5.16 or 19 cents now at Goulding's. So I do miss you guys. Thank you.
We would certainly entertain a bump in that if that's what the board would like to see. We wavered on it. It was
I
private
would say
discussion.
just for the board member travel to and from school board meetings.
How do you justify just board members and not employees though?
They're driving district vehicles.
So if they're driving district, but if there's not access, you kind of have, can't.
Isn't there always access for
I'm not
employees?
aware of there not being access. There, I can't tell you there hasn't been one or two incidents, but it is definitely, if it's happening, I'm not aware of it. It's the vast majority I know, because I've traveled for years in this district. There's a car.
So what do you
That's
suggest?
why we have a transportation.
What I would suggest is go back and find out when that 43 cents a mile came into effect. Compare that with this, the IRS standard mileage rate. And then
That
take
40
that same percentage and just keep it, you know, every year as the IRS.
I can't give you the exact year, but I remember this being adjusted in Clayton Holt's era,
Yeah,
and it has not been touched since. So you are looking at a minimum of 8 to probably 12 years, in my opinion, since that's been adjusted.
and it hasn't been adjusted on purpose because of that very thing, not encouraging people to take their own vehicles when the district has a huge investment in it. That's why it has not been adjusted.
Do you both want to bring back a proposal on that in August?
We
Maybe
can.
the incentive, like kind of that one district is following, like if you do take a district vehicle, there's more incentive. And also if we just adjusted a flat rate, could you do both? Could you bring that both proposals? Or I guess whatever you feel is best, let's put it that way. Whatever you feel is
Well,
best.
if I understood that right, that's when a district vehicle is not available, which
Would
would,
almost be never.
Yeah.
they
which,
never
well,
thought
which
of that.
would include Nelson and Lucille.
Plus, we didn't want it to, because there's probably always a vehicle available for them. I don't know how, anyway, but I don't know, you know, let's say that's not Nelson and so maybe somebody else in 5 years from now
Right.
lives in a whole different area and a lot further out or something. Anyway, I don't know that, but you could have something different for the board if you propose, but
I'm just suggesting something different for the board, just for to and from board meetings and not to and from anywhere else, but to and from board meetings because that's I mean, we have Zoom now, so it's not
what if
required.
they go to the winter conference or something? Would that still
Yeah.
factor in that?
Comment.
Yes, Nelson.
Well, it can't just be specifically for board meetings. There are invites sometimes to come to another campus for whatever occasion is. I mean, we don't do that often anyway, but it does happen.
Right, yeah, good point.
So what don't you guys what you come up with?
Bring something back to you in
Bring it
August.
back, that works? Okay.
Question on that though, so are we saying we wouldn't even entertain the current mill rate increase, or would you want to look at that? Like, I mean, obviously it's an action item on your agenda for later, but
No,
with our fiscal year.
If it's
shifting-
sustainable without raising taxes, I'm all for it.
No, I think it's
Could
definitely
we-
it's an action item.
Would it be possible to pass the mill allowance increase
Yes.
starting July 1, and we will finalize the travel, and that'll go into effect once we finalize that?
However the motion is.
That might be good in the motion, because with July 1, I think it makes sense to change that fiscal year.
All right, thank you. Okay, 150-mile forms for secondary schools. Those just be,
Yeah, these are very standard. You see these every three times a year, and fall, winter, and spring activities.
the only thing is MHSD changed their schedule to say fall, not spring. She'll just, someone will follow. I don't see Julie. Someone will follow, but
Okay.
yeah, they still have spring on their schedule, so. Anything else on that? Okay, let's go to the garbage removal process. Tyrell, that's
Yeah, so the maintenance department reached out and they created an RFP. request for proposal and worked with state purchasing to draft that RFP with technical criteria, and that RFP was posted publicly. We received proposals for that. It went through the technical criteria and the cost criteria, and we selected a vendor based on that evaluation committee's recommendation. And so that's kind of just the really brief process that we went through for that trash removal services.
And follow the protocol. Any questions on that? The
We
board
feel it,
was
yes,
impressed
we
with
feel it did.
Okay.
And we were aware, you all received an email regarding this, correct? So we just thought we would give you a debrief on, we feel we followed the process thoroughly and according to state law, and we have a winner. And anyway, we feel that's where it stands.
questions? All right, we are adjourned until 6. We have nothing for closed session.
Yes, we did. We do have one item.
We do have one item for closed session. We have a
Maybe
closed
quick, I don't know.
Session, before we break, so. I just do that. What item is it?
Personnel.
Personnel. Okay, let's-
I move we go into closed session to discuss personnel.
Steve made a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel. Do I have a second?
No.
Nelson, do you or Lucille hear me?
Nelson Yellowman, aye.
Can you second the motion first?
Okay, I'll second the motion.
Okay, and then go ahead.
Nelson Yellowman,
Okay.
in favor.
Lori Mon, aye.
Gary Shumway, yes.
Lucille? Lucille, are you on? She on?
I'm still showing her on, she's muted.
Can you type a message to her? Thank you, Erin.
Let her know she doesn't need to come back onto 6. and everything. So you guys want to-
Hear us, Lucille?
Hi, this is Lucille. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, everyone hold tight for a few minutes and then I'll let you know when we're in close. Thank you for coming. We're gonna close, so we're gonna excuse the public until we're finished, but you're welcome.
To go into closed session to, we have Mr. White Skunk, is that right? Here, who has to leave before 6 o'clock. Is that
Okay.
correct?
And I have a second. So everyone just hold on for a moment before we go to close. And then, would you like to come a little closer so we can get you on our mic? That would be great.
You might have to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Stop streaming.
Oh, sorry, I have to have a vote on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Selwyn White Skunk. I'm a Ute Mountain Ute tribal member as well as a member of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribal Council. I've been in this official capacity for 18 years, and I've sat on various committees, particularly the Education Committee for the Ute Mountain Ute Tribe, and as well as on a national level on the National Indian Education Committee, particularly with the BIE, the Bureau of Indian Education Organization. One of the responsibilities that I have with several Indian leaders is to ensure that the IPP, the Indian Policy and Procedure Act is followed through in many ways that help our Indian communities, help our school districts, as well as the facilities, whether it's K through 12, whether it's higher education. We ensure that those policies are addressed and the issues that are laid out. As I review the San Juan School District's IPP policies and procedures, I come to a conclusion, and an opinion of mine is that it meets the criteria to the extent that your willingness to have these sessions, these open sessions with our American Indian families and students, so that a curriculum, the LEA portion of it is understood. And as we go through this whole policy, as the Superintendent, Mr. Nielsen, indicated that comments weren't really given forth as in previous years. It's the same across Indian country due to the pandemic. Was a very tough 2.5 years. But the fact of the matter, at this point in time, I'm welcome and I encourage the district, the school district, to have that line of communication open for tribal input. And it's only going to enhance our communications. And as I see for my community representing the Ute Mountain Ute tribe, there's some work that needs to be done. I'm not going to say that there isn't, but there is. There is. And I will ensure that these communications, these line of communications are going to be open and to be expanded upon to meet the need. I detailed several council members to participate. I was hoping that there were going to be more than just me here. But the point is I'm here to represent the tribe and to tell the school district, the board, that we're going to be at the table. We're going to make a commitment to be at the table in all changes and all requirements that's needed. I attended the graduation last month, and I was really impressed with the amount of American Indian students that have graduated and those that have gone on and choose to go on to further their education. So I see this as a milestone, in my opinion, through my eyes, and seeing this as a win-win situation. How do we expand upon it? How do we better it, for the students, future students that are going to attend the district here in San Juan County? I commend the district. I also would like to say that we're going to have some good times and bad times. We're going to have some discussions that are going to be heavy, but beside the point, we're going to come to a consensus and we're going to work together to meet the need of our young students. That's what I'm about. I'm not about something that is going to just blame, because I've been through the system. I have a master's degree in public health. I'm an elected official, and I represent not only Southwest Colorado, but also Southeast Utah as a tribal representative as well. So if there's any issues that need to be coming from the Ute Mountain Ute tribe in letters of support for the district, we'll be there to have that lending hand for the district. That's what I can commit our tribe to fulfill. So again, I appreciate the time. I came in a little late, but I didn't know the process. But the fact of the matter is, I'm here today and I want to express how I see things and how we should work together regarding this IPP. It's something that is beneficial to the tribes. It gives them a leverage to address the issues, particularly with parents that need to know what's going on, what type of programs are being taught in the schools, or the types of curriculum that is being proposed for the students as well. That's our job. That's our responsibility to ensure that they have a quality education that excels them in their livelihood, in their adult life, that these are the opportunities that, if I was given that opportunity, then I need to extend that opportunity out to the tribal memberships of all tribal nations. So I just want to say that, and I'm a very busy individual.
I thank you for coming, Mr. White. Skunk. I really appreciate you. I know you've driven a little ways to be here, and it shows your commitment. I've met with you in Toyoak. I met with your council, and I really appreciate my opportunities there. I can quickly report to you, I've actually asked Griselda just this last week to get me on your next council meeting, because I would like to bring a report back to your whole council. We have started some very exciting things, some things that I think are going to be some of the best things we've ever done. We are establishing a parent committee on White Mesa. We've identified parents. We've contacted them. They're willing to step up and serve on our committee. We're going to work closely. We've had educational nights that have been phenomenal. We've seen some real success. We have all of our planning principals working closely with Griselda. So we've been able to improve the process in the last year, and I want to bring that report back to your council. So she's going to work on getting me on the council agenda so I can bring that back in consultation. But I really appreciate the commitment that you are expressing tonight. I want to also commit, we want to work together, and we are working together better than ever. We want to see, we're starting to see success. We want to see even higher levels of student success. We're seeing some very positive things. So thank you.
You're welcome, and I appreciate your time and those that are on virtual to hear me out on behalf of the tribal communities of all tribal nations. So it's a big task that we're all faced with, but it's a great opportunity to make things happen.
Thank you. And we do welcome you back if you have any concerns or issues you need to address this with. Contact our superintendent. We'd love to have you back and continue to follow through. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Have a
I
good
just
evening.
wanted to
Thank you,
comment,
Councilman.
to tell you too.
Thank you, Mr. White Skunk.
You're welcome.
I spend part of 2 days every week in the White Mesa community.
Oh, great.
With the students there, so never really interested
Yeah,
in
you
what's going on there. So
get an
thanks for
opportunity.
coming.
You get an opportunity to get me to a meeting. You're doing pretty good. It's awesome. I just had an interview with the University of Utah as well on other opportunities, educational opportunities for our tribal membership. So
Yeah,
we're making some good things, making some headway. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a safe drive home. Hopefully you'll get rained out. a little
I'm
bit,
gonna
right?
go through the rain.
I know, it's nice. It's beautiful. So
Enjoy it.
Which graduation did you go to? Did you attend?
The high school.
San Juan right here?
Yes, the one here.
I was wondering if it was White Horse or San.
No, it was right here. I was so fresh. But I came in kind of a little late and I got put in the little virtual. But it was okay because
Let me know when you come.
I was, yeah, the card. I did.
And of course, our rep down at White Mesa.
Okay, so we're gonna remake our motion.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Go right ahead.
I will go to closed session and discuss personnel.
I have a motion by Steve to go into discuss personnel.
Second the motion.
Second by Mary. All, okay, roll call.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Mary Shumway, yes.
Still, it's your turn.
Lucille Cody, yes.
Steve Black, yes.
Lori Mon, yes. Nelson.
Nelson Yellowman, yes.
Okay, thank you. You're gonna just give us a second to close the doors. Aaron, are we off?
I'm going off right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Nothing.
It is great.
You tell me when you want me to start recording.
We're ready to
again.
go. Are we on, Aaron?
Are on, yes.
We don't have any sand square words.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. All
We did
right,
lose Nelson, so,
we did lose Nelson.
Uh-oh.
We are back.
well, he's coming back now. So,
Okay, we are back in session. The time is 6 o'clock. So seeing that we do not have Sound on Square recognition awards, we will now go down to our consent agenda. So I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Lucille Cody, motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, now we're going to turn the time over to the superintendent and the business administrator for our, oh, do we need to wait till 6:15?
I think we probably ought to wait till.
Probably need to wait till
6:15,
6:15. So
'cause That's,
I think
But
what
we
let's try and do is let's
I
go
can do
down
the
and
information items for sure. That takes 30 seconds.
You can probably do action.
we could do some action
Action
items.
items and.
So,
Ooh,
All right.
finish that. Let's finish with the-
okay. All right, let's move to the action items. So the first one is over the counter standing order policy 6330. If I have a motion,
I move that we approve policy 6330 as revised.
okay, so I have a motion by Steve. Do I have a second?
Lucille Cody, second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 We don't really need a motion to see who's going to attend the assembly. Would you like a motion? Or do you think we're good?
We may be better off if so USDA doesn't need to know who it is. We just need to send somebody. And so in the case that I have something come up and I can't go, it's probably might be better if we just, discuss that I can attend.
Correct.
Or
All right, so I have a motion, or I need a motion
and that you should attend. I
to
guess.
assign a board member to attend the pre-delegate and delegate assembly. Do you want to make a motion, or would you like to just say you lead on?
I move to name Mary Shumway to attend the pre-delegate and delegate assembly.
Lucille Cody, second.
Any discussion?
And can we add to that Lori Mon will attend in my absence if I'm unable to attend? Or
Your first alternate?
Sure. We'll just make a note. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have 3 yeses. We are not going to make a motion on the food bank unless we feel we need to. Well, go ahead, Steve. Maybe
I'll
this
take a
is-
stab at it.
Okay,
I
go
make
ahead.
a motion to direct administration to bring this back to our next board meeting with recommendations.
Okay, motion by Steve to bring it back to the board with a second on the motion.
Second, Nelson.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Can you Lucille or Nelson?
Lucille or Nelson, did you say yes?
I did.
Lucille said yes.
Okay. Nelson, were you a yes or a no?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Number 4, secondary schools 150-mile travel schedules. I need a motion.
Motion to accept the 150-mile travels for the fall sports activity.
Okay, motion by Nelson. Do I have a second?
Lucille Cody, second.
Okay, is there any discussion on this item? Okay,
No.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
The San Juan School District travel reimbursement rates for the mills.
I move to approve an increase in the meal rate when traveling. $4 a day, which is $2 for lunch and $2 for dinner increase.
It's $2 for breakfast, $1 for lunch, $1 for dinner.
Yes, that was my motion.
Okay,
Starting July 1,
Starting July 1.
2020.
Thank you.
all right, motion by Mary, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Steve, any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, this is a responsible use of technology agreement for the secondary and elementary schools. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the responsible use of technology agreements.
Okay, motion by Steve, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mary, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Number 7 is the business administrator's contract adjustment that was discussed in closed session last board meeting, and there is a recommended action on that item. If someone would like to make a motion. Or the wording is on that executive content. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, I move to adjust our business administrator's contract to allow for normal salary staff advancement similar to all other administrative positions, starting with the 2023 fiscal year.
Okay, motion by Steve, do I have a second?
Still Cody, second.
Okay, any discussion?
I abstain.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Did you get that, Ida? Okay. And then our last one, a recommendation to appoint a hearing officer for the item we discussed in closed session. If I can get a motion?
I move to appoint a hearing officer for an upcoming hearing.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
There's also a proposed motion under executive for that as well.
Okay, you think we're good with that? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Lucille?
Aye.
Okay. All right, do you want to just hurry and give us the information items?
Yeah, information items, our next board meeting then, if we're without one in July, will fall to August 10th. That is at the district office, so it'll be right here. I wanted to make sure the board is aware of a plan that is well in place and we're working towards, and that is to take the first Monday of the teacher days, that's that first Monday, and to do a district-wide day at San Juan High. Those of you that are familiar with years ago, Mary probably remembers this, was probably on the board, and certainly your dad would have been a part of this, but we always used to have what we called what was it? I was in charge of it for 8 years.
Orientation day.
Orientation. It was in Opening Institute Day, yep. And we'd go to San Juan High. Now, this is going to be slightly different than that. Our goal is going to be, what we're looking at is we're trying to really focus in on a couple of themes. One theme is going to be that we're one team, we're unified, one team with one goal. And the other theme is going to be that we do, the work that we do is above all, that it is, the work that we do is as important as any work anywhere. We're gonna reword that, but it's the most important work that anyone does, is to shape the future and of youth and to change lives. So the work we do is critical. But we are gonna have a keynote address, and you'd be welcome to attend that day if you'd like to. As it gets closer, I'll let you know. There's going to be some things we do as a group, but then there's going to be some breakouts where the schools go and work on goals that they have self-selected. So their principals know right now to work with their faculty, their stakeholders, their leadership teams, and identify their highest priorities, because that's going to give them some real good time to come together and to really focus on moving to the next step. So it's going to be very much personalized. Some schools might be working on establishing their values that they want to really look at. Some might be looking at PLC, some might be looking at, there's just tons of other things that they can choose, but they're going to be focusing in on those days. And so anyway, we're going to come together, and I think it'll be a great start to the year. We're going to try to build a lot of momentum going into a year. We're going to try to rediscover some of the momentum we feel like we're still trying to get back because of COVID. We felt like we were really, really at a high level, and COVID has certainly taken a lot of that from us, and we feel like we've started to get it back. But we feel like this day could really help us set this next year up for a great year to really return to those pre-COVID levels and gain that momentum back. We will trade a day using ESSER funds. We'll trade a day out in the summer for our staff that is on contract that day. So they will still have their 8 hours of prep, and we'll work on that. And that's very allowable with our ESSER funds. So we'll trade that out and we'll come together. And anyway, I want the board to be aware of it, and I think it'll be a great day. And if you'd like to be a part of it, we'd love to have you there. I think it'll be a fun and exciting day. We'll try to make it very rewarding for our staff. Anyone that's on contract, we're going to try to have as much as Team San Juan there as we can. So even like our secretaries, and we're going to have to let our public know. We've talked about this, that we will take some very extensive measures to inform our public, but our buildings may be closed that day as we bring almost everybody here, even our secretaries and everyone. We want them to come and feel a part of Team San Juan that day. We really want to build some team momentum of getting that momentum back and what we're accomplishing. But we'll let our public know that, and make sure we alert them and inform them in multiple ways. And we're better at communicating with our public than ever with our new app and things we do with our app. So anyway, just want the board to be aware of that.
Okay, thank you. And just one more note, we will not be having the board meeting in July. So if you show up, you're on your own. Talk about what you know.
No sandwiches.
Absolutely.
I left on the desks the agenda for the National Johnson O'Malley Conference. If any of you are interested in attending, I have received response from Steve and Nelson and Lucille. So if you're planning on attending, I'll need to make your reservations quickly. They have a early registration deadline for June 30th, and I want to have everything done by then. NAFIS in DC is also the similar dates, September 18th, 19th, and 20th. So they'll overlap. So I expect the superintendent and Tyrell will probably be there instead. And if there's anybody else who's interested in both, they may have to choose. But if you respond, let me know.
These are not the normal dates for the National GOM Conference. So it's just normally not on those same dates in September. Never had this conflict before.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Question.
Yes.
The NAFIS conference, where's the location?
Las Vegas.
NAFIS.
Washington.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, we have just like 2 more minutes to hold on.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Absolutely.
Not that I foresee anything right now, but should something come out of the hearing that would require you to get together, there's an off chance maybe we would look at electronic meetings if possible in July. Just be aware. I don't.
Okay.
And if we could have that, if possible, on a Wednesday, at least for me, that works, because I kind of live my life around Wednesdays or possible school board meetings.
I don't have a crystal ball, so I'm not saying that can't happen, but I don't want to surprise you. either.
And we could do that electronically, couldn't we?
So do you know how, well, I guess you don't know how soon, but if in July, yeah, Wednesdays is fine. I'm just thinking if we did have to, if it was close enough to when we normally meet, then maybe we could just do it then.
And we really don't want the discovery officer will outline.
We meet fairly early in August, so if we get closer to that,
Sounds
then
good.
it makes sense. to put it
Okay. All right, I
Perfect.
think we
We
can
get it.
move.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's move to our budget hearing. So we will turn the time over to the superintendent of business administration.
Okay.
I would probably just like to lead out before I turn it over to Tyrell, just, Tyrell and his office have done a lot of work on this budget, and I want to express appreciation. I've been well informed on the budget, and I feel like I understand it probably better than ever, so I just want to, definitely express appreciation to Tyrell, but he still explains it better than I do, so I'll let him take over.
Nice.
All right, so we've already you've had a month since our last board meeting to kind of look at the budget book. I've given you that are here in person a handout with our local property tax levies and revenue. This information came in from the county a week and a half ago. And last night I got the final basic levy, the minimum school program levy from the state. So Nelson and Lucille, I apologize that that's not on board docs. I just got the final information yesterday and I've just gone through and made some changes. The big things that I want to point out today involve this local property tax levies. And if so, you'll notice on the handout that I've given is it's page 51 and 52. So if you're in your budget book, either the electronic PDF or your physical hard copy, if you'll turn to 51 and 52, in the original proposal that we talked about back in May, you'll see the levies are there, and we just kind of held that minimum school program levy constant because we weren't sure where that would be exactly. We've received that one back. It is 001652. So that is down slightly from our 001661 from last year. The big change here that I want to point out to the board involves our board local levy and our capital local levy. So number 3 in that maintenance and operation fund. So the board local levy goes, that money is designated to the general fund. It does have matching state dollars up to 4 increments. And so we want to maintain at least the 4 there. That's why we maintain our voted leeway at the 0016 to maximize state matching funds. What we're doing here, the capital local levy is increased significantly, and the board local levy is decreased significantly from previous years. The reason for doing that is because there is a formula that the state has in the Capital Outlay Foundation. That formula is looking back at 2 years, and they take the average capital levy along with the debt service levy from other school districts. And there's a big formula that ties into that, but based on your local efforts that you have in generating capital funds, they have a formula that breaks down that is only that those matching dollars are only awarded to certain districts. And we've been the beneficiary of that in our budget. Last year we were like 810,000. This year we're down 700 to 709,000 is our estimate for the upcoming year. The reason we're decreasing there is because if you look at our capital local levy over the past several years, back in 2018-19, we were at 002831. And then the following several years, we have decreased that. And because of that decrease, we've started to see a decrease in what our state allocation is for that Capital Outlay Foundation. By making this adjustment, 003 is the state maximum in capital. By making this adjustment, we'll be maximizing our formula, our place in that formula that the state has. to really maximize our ability to capture that allocation from USBE. What that does is it does have a trickle down effect. By increasing the capital local levy, we're going to raise a lot more local funds that will go into our capital fund, and we'd be losing local dollars that would go into the general fund. So that would affect our revenues in the budget, and those haven't been changed yet. Those could be changed once a motion is made by the board. But what we would be doing there is, we have the benefit of having impact aid funds that we can then move to kind of make up that difference in the general fund, so that we're not budgeting a deficit, but still maximizing our ability to capture that allocation from the state in the capital fund. To give you just kind of an idea, last year we gave up by not being, at that higher rate in the capital fund. We gave up over $117,000 that we could have captured. In this next year, had our rate been 003 2 years back, because again, it's looking back 2 years, but had our rate been 003, we would have been over $200,000 more in our foundation allocation. So just right there, $300,000 in the last 2 years that we've not captured because our rate has gone down in the capital levy, is why I'm making this proposal that we increase capital local levy, decrease the board local levy so that we don't lose any state matching dollars. And we will work, as administration to make sure that we meet our obligations with the impact aid funds to make sure that we're not budgeting a deficit there. And I would make those changes in the budget if the board is okay with that recommendation. But that's why you're seeing that dramatic change in the board local and the capital local levies. Just keep in mind, this is using the certified tax rate, which is significantly lower than the past several years. So we are giving it, a decrease there in the tax rate pretty significantly. And this budget is based on adopting it with the certified tax rate. Other than that, there's been no other major changes to the budget. If there's any questions that I can try to help answer, I'm happy.
You talked about how in the budget book, that kind of trickles out through, so you'll have to update the budget book a little bit because of if it is approved.
Yeah, if you as a board approve this change and adopt those rates, I will have to go back in and we'll make those changes to the budget just to show where the revenue is coming from. Local, federal revenue would be impacted there. And we would do that before we have to make our final budget upload to the State Board of Education, which is a requirement there. So if that's approved, I would make those changes, and that would be posted publicly as well. But
Okay.
But this handout includes the most recent proposed budget from administration, right? So the motion just needs
And the most recent tax rates that we've received.
yeah, so I did, because this came out last minute, I did put in under
oh yeah, is
under
this in our, I didn't.
it's not on your board docs because this, I created this late last night.
So this is not available to the public at all.
Not this exact form, no, because the changes have been made. So that's why in your agenda under the budget action item, there is a recommended motion, and that spells out that we, as a board, that you would, if you approve this, to adopt those rates with those specific rate changes. So that you're giving direction to us as administration that we feel that there's clarity from the board as to what those rates are. We would maintain everything else that was public knowledge beforehand. But if the board approves that, we would just ask that there be clarification in the motion to adopt the certified tax rate by increasing the capital local levy to the 003 and reducing the board local levy to the 00650. And I did include language in
050.
00065. Yeah, and that language there is in under executive content for you on your agenda. online
Okay, I
as
don't have mine open, so.
under the action item. So if you wanted to use that language, if you approve that change, there is language in there for, just to kind of give that clarification there.
All right.
Any other
Does
questions?
anybody have more questions? Okay. Well, I don't.
I just want to say thank you for
Yes.
being so thorough in this and catching that loss that we've been experiencing and improve that situation so that we can capture that, the state matching funds, if I, state match?
It's not an exact match
not
like
exact,
the other
but
levies, but it is an
state
allocation from the state
allocation.
because of
And
our
so,
local.
yeah, appreciate you recovering that for us, as you know, now that we can start recovering that, and we've lost it out in the last several years.
I do want to point out, by making this change, you're not going to see that effect in the next, this upcoming fiscal year or even the following because of the way they look at it.
2-year lag.
It's a 2-year lag at looking back at that. So, when we do our budget next year, we're not going to see a significant increase in that capital outlay foundation. And there's a lot of things, it's really a moving target there, because based on how other districts across the state increase or decrease their capital levy, it changes that formula because the state average
So
changes.
it's not always a 003?
So for us, that's the maximum that we can, but other districts, because the debt services levy is included in that average, that's a moving target. And, because it takes the average into consideration when doing the formula, when they calculate the formula for what they're giving to districts. That's a moving target, and it could fluctuate a lot, but by increasing to the 003, we're guaranteeing we're doing everything on our end, that we're showing local effort to really, that we're trying is everything we can to do to increase our capital funds. And then the state rewards in a way your local effort by giving you additional allocation. So that is a moving target, but we won't see a shift in an increase, at least for maybe.
Thank you. Very good. Any questions?
An observation. On the tax revenue, second page of this, you see it consistently going up there from year to year, from 5.9 million to 6.17 million for this coming year, estimated. That increase from 21, 22 to 22, 23 is about a 3.4% increase. Latest inflation numbers that come out of about 9% over the last year. So, so even though it looks good here on paper, it's probably a little bit of a decrease in purchasing power from one year to the next. So.
Anything else? All right. No comment, public comment? Okay. So I'm going to request a motion to adopt the 2022-2023 budget that's been explained to us by the business administrator. And then if you need the language that they suggested.
I move to adopt the revised fiscal year 2022 budget and the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. And also set the tax rate at the certified rate of 0.006913 by increasing the capital local levy to 0.003000 and reducing the board local levy to 0.000650.
I second the motion.
All right, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nelson, give it.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, are there any other concerns? Anything? All right, we are adjourned.